They laughed when the paralyzed billionaire rolled into their dying town. 23 days later, those same people carried him through the streets crying. This is what happened in between. The black Mercedes van pulled up to the town square, and Terrence Blake felt every pair of eyes turn toward him. The wheelchair lift hummed as it lowered him to the cracked pavement of Riverside, Alabama. His driver, Marcus, steadied the chair, but Terrence waved him off. He could handle this himself. Lord have mercy, is that him? A woman's voice carried across the square. She didn't bother whispering. Terrence rolled forward, his expensive suit already drawing attention in a town where most people wore work boots and faded jeans. The February sun beat down on flooded streets that still hadn't dried from last month's disaster. Brown water marks stained every building up to 4 feet high. Sandbags lined the doorways. The smell of mold hung in the air like a dirty secret nobody wanted to talk about. Meeting's at 7, Marcus said, checking his phone. You sure about this? Terrence nodded. His hands gripped the wheels of his chair, and he pushed himself toward the community center. Every rotation of those wheels cost him. The pain in his back never stopped, not since that day 3 years ago when the construction site crane collapsed. But he'd learned to smile through it. Inside the community center, folding chairs squeaked against linoleum floors. About 60 people packed the room, their faces worn down by worry and exhaustion. Terrence positioned himself near the front, right where everyone could see him. He wanted them to see him. Mayor Richard Davis stood at a wooden podium that had seen better days. He was a big man, the kind who looked like he'd played football in high school and never stopped talking about it. His red tie hung loose around his thick neck. "All right, folks, let's get started," Davis said, banging a gavel that made everyone jump. "We're here to discuss solutions for our flooding problem. As you know, last month's flood destroyed 40 homes, wiped out Jenkins' farm, and caused $2 million in damage we don't have." A woman in the third row started crying. Her husband put his arm around her shoulders. "We've got engineers coming from the state next month," Davis continued. "They'll assess the situation and—" "Excuse me." Terrence raised his hand. Davis squinted at him like he'd just noticed a stain on his shirt. "Yes, my name is Terrence Blake. I'm an engineer. I've worked on water management systems in 12 states. I'd like to help rebuild Riverside's flood defenses." The room went silent. Then someone in the back laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. "You're Terrence Blake?" Davis leaned forward, studying him. "The billionaire who made all that money with those fancy building projects?" "Yes, sir. And you're here because—" Davis let the question hang in the air like smoke. "Because I saw what happened to your town on the news. Because I know I can help. I've designed systems that—" "Son," Davis held up his hand. "I appreciate you coming down here from— where is it you live?" "Atlanta." "Right. Atlanta." Davis smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "But let me ask you something. When's the last time you climbed up on a roof? When's the last time you lifted a sandbag? Dug a trench? Got your hands dirty?" Terrence's jaw tightened. "I design the systems. I don't need to." "See, that's the problem." Davis walked out from behind the podium, getting closer. "We don't need designs. We don't need blueprints. We need bodies. We need strong backs and working legs. We need people who can actually do the work." A few people in the crowd nodded. Terrence saw them. Every single one. "I understand your concern," Terrence said, keeping his voice steady even though his heart hammered in his chest. "But engineering isn't about physical labor. It's about solving problems. I can solve your flooding problem. Can you?" Davis crossed his arms. "Because I'm looking at you, and I'm wondering what exactly you think you can do from that chair." The words hit like a slap. Someone gasped. Terrence's hands went white-knuckled on his armrests. "Mayor Davis, that's out of line," an elderly man called out. "No, Tom, it's a fair question." Davis turned back to the crowd. "This man rolls into our town in his fancy van with his fancy suit, and he wants to save us? Where was he 3 years ago when the river first started rising? Where was he 5 years ago when we begged the state for help? Now he shows up, and we're supposed to trust him." Terrence's mind flashed back. 3 years ago. The construction site in Birmingham. He'd been inspecting the 15th floor when the cable snapped. The sound of metal screaming. The sensation of falling. The concrete floor rushing up to meet him. The crack of his spine. The sirens. The hospital room where the doctor said, "paralyzed from the waist down," like he was commenting on the weather. "I had my own problems 3 years ago," Terrence said quietly. "We all got problems," Davis shot back. "But we can't afford to waste time on someone who can't do the job. "I'm sorry you came all this way, Mr. Blake, but Riverside needs real help. Not charity. Not pity projects from rich folks who want to feel good about themselves." The room erupted in scattered applause. Not everyone clapped, but enough did to make Terrence's stomach turn. He wheeled himself toward the door, and the crowd parted like he carried something contagious. Outside, the humid Alabama air wrapped around him like a wet blanket. Marcus waited by the van. "Let's go home," Marcus said softly. Terrence stared at the flooded streets, at the water-damaged homes, at the desperate faces watching him from windows. He thought about the designs already forming in his mind, the calculations, the solutions. "Find me a place to rent," Terrence said. "We're staying." If this story is touching your heart right now, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. You won't believe how this ends, and I post stories like this every single week that will change how you see the world. Don't miss out, subscribe now. Marcus found him a room above Martha's Diner on Main Street. The building was old, the stairs were impossible, so they installed an electric lift on the side that creaked every time Terrence used it. Cost him $3,000 just for the installation. Martha, the owner, was a black woman in her 60s who didn't ask questions. She just took his money and gave him the key. "Bathroom's down the hall," she said. "I modified it last year when my husband got sick. Bars on the walls, roll-in shower. You'll manage." The room smelled like grease and coffee. One window overlooked the flooded street. Terrence set up his laptop on a folding table and got to work. Every morning, people walked past his window on their way to clean up the mess. They carried buckets and mops and wore masks because of the mold. Sometimes they looked up and saw him in the window. Nobody waved. Terrence ordered equipment online. Sensors, batteries, waterproof casings, circuit boards. Everything delivered to Martha's back door. She'd bring the boxes up on the lift, stack them in his room, and leave without comment. But he caught her looking at the equipment sometimes, curiosity in her eyes. "What are you building?" she asked one morning, setting down a box from Amazon. "Insurance," Terrence said. At night, when the town slept, Terrence worked. His hands moved across keyboards and soldered connections. The pain in his back screamed at him to stop, to rest, to take the pills his doctor prescribed. He threw the pills away. He needed his mind sharp. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Mayor Davis saw him at Martha's Diner one afternoon and walked right past his table without acknowledging him. The message was clear. "You're not welcome here." But Terrence kept working. He mapped every inch of Riverside using satellite imagery. He studied the river's flow patterns going back 40 years. He analyzed rainfall data, ground absorption rates, and the failure points in the town's existing levee system. The picture became clear. Riverside wasn't built wrong. It was built in the wrong place at the wrong angle to the river. But moving a town wasn't possible. Predicting the next disaster was. On March 15th, Terrence's phone buzzed at 3 in the morning. Weather alert. Severe thunderstorms expected. 4 to 6 inches of rain in 12 hours. Flash flood warning for Riverside and surrounding areas. He rolled to his window. The street below was empty. Dark. Peaceful. It wouldn't stay that way. By 6 a.m., the rain started. Not gentle. Angry. The kind of rain that sounded like fists pounding on the roof. Terrence watched the water rise in the streets. 1 inch. 2 inches. 3. His phone buzzed again. Marcus calling. "The news says it's bad," Marcus said. "We should leave." "Not yet." "Terrence, man, the bridge might flood. We'll be trapped." "I know." He hung up and kept watching. His equipment, hidden in waterproof boxes along the riverbank, sent data to his laptop. Water levels. Flow speed. Pressure points. The numbers climbed. His prediction model showed red. Dangerous. Critical. By 8 a.m., sirens wailed through Riverside. The volunteer fire department drove through streets with loudspeakers. Mandatory evacuation. Everyone to the high school. This is not a drill. Terrence grabbed his laptop and rolled to the lift. It moved so slowly. Too slowly. The rain soaked him before he reached the bottom. Martha stood in her doorway, a suitcase in her hand. "You coming?" she yelled over the storm. "I need to get to the community center. That's the opposite direction of safety. Trust me." She shook her head but didn't stop him. Terrence pushed his wheelchair through rising water. The wheels caught on debris. His arms burned. The rain blinded him. But he kept moving. The community center doors were locked. He pounded on them until a young woman opened up. She wore a volunteer vest and looked terrified. "Sir, you need to evacuate to the high school. I need to see Mayor Davis. Now!" He's coordinating the evacuation from. "Get him." Terrence's voice came out like thunder. "Get him or people are going to die." She ran. Terrence rolled inside, leaving a trail of water. His laptop was soaked but still working. He pulled up his data on the main screen in the meeting room. The same room where they'd mocked him. Davis burst through the door, phone pressed to his ear. "What the hell are you?" "The levee is going to break," Terrence said. "East side. Near the Jenkins property. You have maybe 40 minutes. Davis stared at him. "How do you?" "I've had sensors monitoring the river for 3 weeks. The pressure is too high. The soil is saturated. The levee will fail at this exact point." He pointed to the map on the screen. "If it breaks, the water will flood the entire east side. That's where most people evacuated to. The high school is on the east side." "The high school is on high ground," Davis said, but his voice shook. "High ground doesn't matter if the levee breaks upstream from it. The water will come from behind. They'll be trapped." Davis looked at the screen. At the data. At the red warning zones. "This could be wrong." "It's not wrong. We don't have time to move 300 people again." "Then protect them." Terrence pulled up another screen. "I built an emergency barrier system. Mobile flood walls. They're in my storage unit outside town. You deploy them here, here, and here." He pointed to the map. "They'll redirect the water away from the school. Buy you enough time to reinforce the levee." "That's impossible. We don't have that kind of equipment." "You do now. I bought it. It's sitting in Unit 47 at Storall on Highway 9. Here's the access code." Terrence wrote it on a piece of paper. "The deployment instructions are in the first container. It's designed for fast setup. 6 people can do it in 20 minutes. Davis took the paper. His hand trembled. "If you're wrong." "I'm not wrong." They locked eyes. Terrence saw the calculation happening in the mayor's mind. Pride versus survival. Ego versus 300 lives. Davis grabbed his phone. "Get me Fire Chief Morrison. Now." 17 minutes later, trucks roared toward the storage unit. Terrence monitored everything from the community center. His sensors showed the levee weakening. Cracks forming. Water pushing through. "They're deploying the barriers," Davis said, watching his phone. "Your instructions better be right." "They are." At 9:42 a.m., the levee broke. The sound carried across town like an explosion. Water surged through the gap, a brown wall of destruction racing toward the high school. But it hit Terrence's barriers first. The mobile walls held. The water redirected, flowing into empty fields instead of toward evacuees. People screamed. Children cried. But the barriers held. Davis stood frozen, watching the live feed from the fire chief's phone. The water that should have killed people crashed harmlessly into farmland. "Oh my God," he whispered. By noon, the rain stopped. The crisis passed. Emergency crews reinforced the levee. The barriers stayed in place, protecting the town. And 300 people at the high school had no idea how close they'd come to disaster. Terrence sat in his wheelchair in the community center, exhausted. His back felt like broken glass. His arms could barely move. But he'd done it. The doors burst open. People flooded in. Martha, the woman who'd cried at the meeting. Tom, the elderly man who'd defended him. Fire Chief Morrison. And Mayor Davis. They surrounded him. Martha had tears streaming down her face. "The chief told us everything," she said. "You saved us." "The barriers saved you," Terrence said quietly. "No." Davis stepped forward. His eyes were red. "You saved us. And I'm sorry. For what I said. For how I treated you. I was wrong." The crowd murmured agreement. Someone started clapping. Then everyone clapped. The sound filled the room. "We want to hire you," Davis said. "Officially. To design a permanent system. Whatever you need. Whatever it costs." Terrence looked at their faces. The same faces that had dismissed him. Mocked him. Doubted him. Now they looked at him like he was something precious. "I'll do it," he said. "But not for money. I'll do it because Riverside deserves to be safe." They carried him. Actually lifted his wheelchair with him in it, and carried him through the streets. The whole town came out. They cheered. They cried. They touched his chair like it was blessed. Martha walked beside him, her hand on his armrest. "I knew you were building something good," she said. Terrence smiled. For the first time in 3 years, the pain in his back didn't matter. The wheelchair didn't matter. What mattered was that he'd proven something everyone needed to learn. Being broken doesn't mean being useless. Sometimes the people everyone overlooks are exactly the ones who save the day. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that being broken doesn't mean being useless. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought. I read every single one. New inspiring stories drop every week. Subscribe so you never miss them. Thank you for watching.